We began by talking about accuracy and bias. We talked about tracking accuracy, which is basically how well you can tell who your partner is, how well you know them in terms of their personality. And we also talked about directional bias, which refers to the overall positivity or negativity of our perceptions of someone. What do we mean by bias? Do we mean, oh, look, here's Han. Hans is wonderful. Anna loves Hans. Oh, wait, she's wrong. He's a terrible, horrible person. Are we talking about a situation where someone is essentially delusional? They don't know their partner and that has negative consequences for them. Or maybe we're talking about something a little bit less nefarious. Here we have Kristoff and Anna, and Kristoff is smiling at Anna, and he thinks she's a plucky, determined girl. She seems nice, sweet, and beautiful. She cares so much about her sister. She's going out of her way to help her sister. Maybe she's a little silly, a little crazy, but he sees her just a little bit more positively. And that has good consequences for their relationship. Which of these is more accurate? A first study to look at this, we're talking about whether or not there are benefits of directional bias. Seeing your partner slightly more positively than you objectively should. Is that actually good for your relationship? In this case, they had these dating couples complete questionnaires about themselves and their partners, their ideals for who their partner is and how they think their partner sees them, and also things like satisfaction. The authors looked at how people saw themselves and how their partners saw them. Another way of saying that is they looked at how people saw their and also how their partners saw themselves. And they found that people saw their partners more positively than their partners saw themselves. In fact, they saw their partners more like their ideal partner than their partner actually was. This idealization correlated positively with relationship satisfaction. So in this study, there was evidence for benefits of directional bias. But this was a cross-sectional study. What that means they only did it at one time point. They didn't follow them over time. But it's possible that causation goes the other way. So maybe those who are in happier relationships show positive illusions. And then it's those positive illusions that might still have bad outcomes over the long term. In the beginning, you have to have a happy relationship or you wouldn't get in that relationship to begin with. And then maybe that leads to these positive illusions that are bad for you. So maybe over the long term, having positive illusions turns out badly as your partner tries to freeze you and take over your kingdom. Another study looked at the potential long term benefits of positive illusions. This one was a longitudinal study of dating couples. In other words, they assessed them multiple times. In this case, they assessed them at baseline, again, 5 months later, and then at 11 to 12 months from baseline. They found that positive illusions, seeing your partner more positively than he or she saw him or herself, predicted relationship stability. People were less likely to break up when they saw their partner more positively than their partner saw themselves. So again, we see benefits of directional bias. But this was a study of dating couples. It's possible that effects are different in married couples. Maybe positive illusions are best when you're dating, but accuracy is best when you're married. You need the positive illusions to enter the married trap and put on the old ball and chain. But then once you actually are stuck with your partner, it's better to know who they really are. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe in married couples, seeing your partner overly positively will end up with him trying to freeze you and take over your kingdom. We have here another study looking at satisfaction in newlywed couples. In this one, they obtained positive illusions at the time of marriage and then every 6 months for 3 years. They looked at both the person's own satisfaction and their partner's satisfaction in the relationship. I'm going to show you a figure here that shows basically how satisfaction changes over time. I just want to remind you, in general, people's satisfaction plummets after they get married. When you are newlyweds, that is the honeymoon phase, that is in typically the best time in your relationship. You just decided to make this public commitment. You're going to be with this person forever. You've, ruled out everyone else. This is the person. And then over time, you kind of, all right, I'm getting a little bit bored. I've been in this relationship forever. People's satisfaction tends to decline. But what happens when we're talking about positive illusions? Well, you can see when people don't idealize their partner, the relationship satisfaction plummets, just like what I just described. But when they do idealize their partner, it doesn't. People who start out idealizing their partners don't show these decreases in satisfaction over time. Now, that's my own satisfaction. Maybe my husband doesn't feel the same way. So, what about partner satisfaction? Maybe he's super annoyed that I don't know who he is, but I'm not picking up on it. That's not the case. Instead, if I were not to idealize my partner, his satisfaction would plummet. When I idealize my partner, it doesn't change as much. So he's still happier in his relationship than he would be if I didn't idealize him. So, yay, again, benefits of directional bias. Directional bias is winning out here. So, in general, it turns out it's actually good to have positive illusions, at least when we're talking about directional bias. If we see our partner slightly more positively than they see themselves, that is actually good for the relationship. Again, we're not talking about delusions. We're not completely out of whack. We don't think that, this horribly abusive person is somehow wonderful. Instead, we're talking about a typical average person. And it's better to see them just slightly positively. In general, people are pretty good. Usually, when we have conflicts, it's just about differences in preferences or goals, or maybe incompatible personalities, something along those lines. Most of the time, your partner is not objectively a bad person. But what if your partner is an objectively bad person? What if you have a really crappy partner? If your partner is actually evil, then seeing them more positively than you should might end up with that person trying to freeze you and take your kingdom. In McNulty and Carney, they looked at couples with greater objective risk. They wanted to know, if you have a crappy partner, is it good to have positive expectations for them? In this study, they're looking at changes in satisfaction over time based on the match between people's expectations for their partner and the objective risk they encounter. And so in this study, we're looking at partner's behavior over here. So if the partner is really negative, and then over here, we're looking at blaming partner. We'll start with this one. So this is changes in satisfaction. You can see again, everyone's going down. We're talking about newlywed couples again. So all satisfaction decreases over time. But as you can see here, some people's satisfaction decreases to a greater extent than others. Let's take a look at these bar graphs and figure out what's going on. Here we have more negative behavior. This is when the partner is engaging in more negative behavior. This is a crappy partner. If you have more positive expectations for your partner's behavior, your satisfaction plummets. If you have less positive expectations for their behavior, not so bad, right? They're more satisfied over time than people who had more positive expectations. So matching your expectation to their negative behavior is actually better for you. We're talking about a partner with more positive behavior. Having more positive expectations is slightly better. Having less positive expectations is pretty bad. So if you have an objectively good partner and you think they're bad or they will be bad, you're going to be less satisfied in their relationship. So in summary, having a negative partner, you want to have more negative expectations, or at least less positive expectations. If you have a positive partner, you want to have more positive expectations, right? Now, what about blaming the partner? Essentially the same thing. If you have an objectively bad partner and they are engaging in negative behavior, you're less satisfied when you have more positive expectations than when you have less positive expectations. But if you have an objectively good partner, holding less positive expectations is worse. You want to have more positive expectations. We want to match. If your partner is bad, you want less positive expectations. If your partner is good, you want more positive expectation. When the partner is actually evil, you don't want to be wrong about that. You want to see them accurately. Remember, I spoke about the Fletcher and Kerr meta analysis before, looking at tracking accuracy and directional bias. They also looked at the extent to which tracking accuracy and directional bias were associated with relationship satisfaction over time. As I've already shown you, directional bias tends to be positively associated with relationship satisfaction. Greater directional bias, seeing your partner more positively than you should, is actually associated with better relationship satisfaction. But they also looked at tracking accuracy. So this is how well you know your partner. So do you know, for example, that your partner is relatively more conscientious than they are extroverted? They found that tracking accuracy didn't predict relationship quality overall. This is a correlation of 0.03. That's basically zero. It was not significant. The extent to which people understood who their partner was not associated with relationship quality, despite the fact that the individual studies hypothesized the tracking accuracy should matter, that seeing your partner accurately should lead to greater relationship quality. This brings us to the question, why does it seem like seeing our partners realistically should be best for our relationships? Why do we feel like we know our partners so well? The truth is, we experience wish fulfillment. We take this little image in our heads of what we want our partner to be like, and then we meet someone and we don't know them very well yet. But every little thing we see seems to confirm all these things that we expected, and we check off the checklist, and they're just exactly what we were hoping to find. Right. And we feel like we know our partner so well because we are projecting information onto them. But turns out that we're actually a little bit egocentric. In a study called Kindred Spirits, the authors examined both dating and married couples and looked at perceptions of the partner and perceptions of the self. They found that those who are more satisfied in their relationships see their partner as similar to themselves, when in fact their partner isn't. Instead, perceived similarity is actually egocentric projection. They tended to see their partners similar to themselves, and basically they projected their qualities onto their romantic partner. So they saw things in their partner that was consistent with their own personalities, but was not consistent with the way the partner saw him or herself. This experience of perceiving similarity is actually egocentric projection. I'm going to show this to you visually. So we have Anna's self perception, Anna's perception of Hans, and Hans's self perception. And so this is what we expect things to look like. There's going to be a little bit of overlap here and there. And then this is the part in the middle here where Anna's similarity and Hans's similarity actually resides. This is Anna's self perception overlapping with her own perception, overlapping with his perception, right? And so this is what we expect this is going to look like. But here's what it actually looks like. So Anna's self perception overlaps hugely with her perception of Hans, and Hans's self perception is way over here. So it turns out we actually don't know our partners as well as we think. Even though we do show some tracking accuracy, we tend to project a lot of our own perceptions of ourselves onto our partner, and perceiving that we're similar is the thing that matters for relationship satisfaction, not actually being so.